This is not a video I thought I'd be making on a Monday morning. Oh, man. So is Alameda Research trading insolvent, and is the world's second largest cryptocurrency exchange, FTX, at risk of collapse? We've seen an article being posted here by Dirty Bubble Media, who exposed the Celsius collapse and fraud, which we covered off here on this channel. And as you can see, there has been a release by CoinDesk of a balance sheet which seems to indicate that Alameda Research, which is owned by Sam Bankman-Fried, it's his trading entity, is trading insolvent. Now, trading insolvent means that your assets are less than your liabilities. You cannot even cover your loans. Now, initially when you look at it, you're like, hang on a second, $14.6 billion in loan versus $8 billion in assets. But we're going to dive into exactly what is going on and if this could mean the collapse of the FTX token. CZ from Binance is weighing in on this. Loads of big people are weighing in on this, and this is having an effect on the FTT price. Could this collapse be bigger than the Terra Luna collapse? Could this be the final capitulation, leading us to the bottom of this deep and painful long bear market we've been in, which has seen the collapse of Terra Luna, 3 Hours Capital famously going down, we've seen Celsius, we've seen Voyager, and I hate to be making this video, but I did say that there could be one more on the radar. Now, I personally don't want to be spreading FUD here, and I don't think FTX is going to fail. I'm going to be extremely shocked if the second largest exchange in the world is having as shady practices as we're seeing here, but we are going to cover it up because there's no smoke without fire. We're going to try to analyze this in a pragmatic way. Smash up the subscribe button, guys. If you want to buy any cryptocurrencies, BYBIT and BitGet, links in the description. But right now, should we be on FTX? We're going to cover that question off as well, because personally, if I had any funds on FTX right now, even though this could just be smoke and no fire, I personally wouldn't take the risk. It'll be off, right? And if it recovered and they get through this, I'll be bringing it back into the exchange, but more on that in a little while. Total assets, 14.6 billion. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 5.8 billion is of the FTT token. Now, what's the issue with that? Well, the FTT token is printed out of thin air by the sister or parent company, whatever you want to call it, FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried can print this at will and give it to Alameda Research. So 5.8 billion there could derive no value if this went into a difficult situation, leaving it 6 billion short here. Then you've got 1.2 billion in Solana, which is also part of Sam Bankman-Fried's ecosystem. So again, a huge risk, right? This is cross risk. This is not something that's safe and separate and pegged. Then you've got 3.37 billion in unidentified crypto, which is hugely volatile, of course. 2 billion in investments in equity securities, and that roughly leaves 2.2 billion in assets. So really, they've got a hole between 8 billion here and 2.2. So you're looking at a $5.8 billion hole here in their balance sheet when you take out some of these risk-adjusted assets. And that's where things get really, really interesting. This is initially what started to spread some of the concern. And I think what Bubble Media did really good here was give this visual. And I think this really did explain really well what's going on in terms of this flywheel effect. So what you end up happening is you have a company like FTX who can go ahead and create a token. So they can create the FTT token and they can just mint it. Then what they need to do is pump the token price. Now there's various methods they can do this, right? If you're as influential as Sam Bankman-Fried, you can pump the token pretty quickly, or you can lobby people, you can pay influencers, you can sponsor big stars like Tom Brady, you can name a stadium, right? Such as the FTX Arena. And what that then does is drive the price up. So let's say the FTT token goes up to $30. You can then mark these gains to your balance sheet. So when your balance sheet had 0 before you printed the token, now you can show on your balance sheet 30 billion, right? If you've got if you've got a billion of these tokens which you've minted, and now they're all $30 each, you can show 30 billion on your balance sheet. Now look at that. Check that out. Alameda Research, from nothing to a $30 billion balance sheet. Now they can show these gains to investors. Hey, Investor A, hey, Investor B, do you want to get involved in the crypto space? We're one of the biggest trading platforms in the crypto space. Why wouldn't you want to join us? We've got 30 billion on our balance sheet. We're heavily collateralized. Don't worry about us. And so they raise cash and equity sales and loans. And guess what? Where do they use that money? So they bring in that fiat currency, real money, right? They bring in that real money and then they go spend it on more sponsorships and more celebrities. Why? To pump the price even further. So the price goes up even more of the FTT token. Let's say it goes to $50. Now, again, they can mark those gains to the balance sheet. They can say, oh, look, $50 billion is now on our balance sheet. We're growing so well. And so the flywheel continues, right? Until FTT loses value. When it loses value, that is where they need to dig into their reserves to keep the price pegged and to show they've got collateral. We're going to come on to that shortly, but this is the concern. This is the concern right here, that this is what's going on. And if anything was to happen to that FTT token, this could cause a big risk here. Okay, so you can go through this. I've tweeted this article out, so definitely worth a read. Really good post. Now, here's what's also interesting. When you scan the blockchain, FTT ownership is highly concentrated. 93% of the total supply are in only 10 addresses. Only 180 to 200 actively transacting addresses use the FTT token. And it's insane. You can go for a read all this, but it just does not look right. But here's where things get more interesting. This is where it really started to notch up and people really started to take notice. And that is where CZ decided to tweet. And he tweeted yesterday, as part of Binance's exit from FTX equity last year, so that's when they split last year because they were working together, got paid out in a bunch of FTT tokens, right? To the equivalent of $2.1 billion of FTT he sat on. Now again, let's put this into context back here on the balance sheet. Their Alameda is sitting on 5.8 billion of FTT. So they're sitting on just under half of what they're holding, right? It's a significant amount. Due to recent revelations that have came to light, what does he mean by revelations, right? Obviously, he's referring to the balance sheet. We have decided to liquidate remaining FTT on our books. Very interesting. And you can go through and you can read the thread of what he explains. We'll try to do so in a way that minimizes impact. We encourage collaboration between people. We typically hold tokens for a long term. So what he's trying to say here is that, look, this is not an attack, because a lot of people are coming out and saying, this is an attack on Sam Bankman-Fried. You've waited for the FUD to spread when he's at a weak point and you're trying to dump the FTT token to destroy your competitor, which is a really interesting argument. Now, if I was to play devil's advocate and play the other argument, I'd be saying, hang on a second. If I'm CZ, I'm looking there and I've got 2.1 billion sat in FTT token. Now, when I got paid this out last year, you're looking at here, you've had plenty of opportunity to be selling at far higher prices. I mean, FTT token went as high here as $84. Why would I be selling now at $22? Right? That's the argument you'd be making. Clearly, CZ says he's a long-term holder. Wouldn't he wait for the next bull run to then take part in it? But then you realize, hang on a sec, if this is the data we have access to as one of the biggest exchange out there, CZ knows better than anybody the practices that Sam Bankman-Fried and Alameda are going through. He's probably got extra information which we don't have access to, and clearly he risks at this point losing his $2.1 billion, right? That's what the devil's advocate would say, and therefore he wants to sell just to make sure he's taking risk. And I think that's what we're going to come on to shortly, because he gives an explanation behind that as well. So that was the initial thought. Then you had Caroline come out. Let's just cover off what Caroline says, because we've got to play both parts of the story here. Caroline's the CEO over at Alameda. Remember, Sam Bankman-Fried's the CEO at FTX. Let's not get that confused. A few notes on the balance sheet info that has been circulating. That specific balance sheet is for a subset. So what she's saying is, look, the article you're looking at, which CoinDesk leaked out, is only part of our balance sheet. We've got a bunch of other corporate entities, and there's another $10 billion of assets which aren't being reflected here. We're perfectly fine, right? No issues. And I expect nonetheless them to say that. Then they said the balance sheet breaks out a few of our biggest long positions. We obviously have hedges that aren't listed. So what she's saying here is, look, you showed our positions here. You showed that we got a bunch of Solana, a bunch of other crypto here. And this is where it gets crazy, right? We've got a bunch of Serum, Oxygen, Maps, and Bondfeeder. Guys, these are super low market cap projects forming a big part of Alameda's balance sheet, such that we have to mention it, right? It's that big. So they've got more of those tokens than in circulating supply. They can kill all those projects now by dumping. Right, which is insane, for the second biggest exchange in the world. These are the dodgy practices which I don't like, which really frustrate me. And, you know, we covered this off with Celsius. We covered it off with Furious Capital. We covered it with Terra Luna. But I always thought that Binance and FTX were a tier above. And I still believe that. I do think Binance is a tier above FTX, but I still believe FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried are operating at a tier. And I put Coinbase in that category as well, above the names I've just mentioned, right? I do not think they're anywhere remotely in the same echelon as a Voyager or a Celsius. So I'll be very disappointed if anything comes of this, and I'll give that in my summary shortly. So that was the concern there. So she's saying, look, we've got these hedges in place that are not disclosed there. We've also started paying off a bunch of our loans anyway. So this is an old report you've got, she's saying, and that 7.4 billion is no longer 7.4 billion, but she doesn't tell us what it actually is. Now, that wasn't all that Caroline was going to tweet. Caroline also came out to say to CZ, look, if you're looking to minimize the market impact of your sales, then why don't you sell it to us off the market? Because remember, if you don't sell it on the market, the price won't move. You can do an OTC transfer, over-the-counter transfer. We'll buy it for $22. CZ didn't reply to that, apart from responding to this tweet here by Ki Yong-ju, who says, yeah, look at your stablecoin reserves. You've dropped 93% over the last 2 weeks on stablecoin reserves, which is insane because they're using their reserves to buy FTT to defend almost this artificial peg they've created, right? So they're buying to kind of keep the price. Because remember, if the FTT token goes on a tailspin here, we're sitting at support at 22. There's no coincidence she's chosen the 22 number. Why has she chosen it? I mean, you can see here, right? There you go. Right here, this is support at 22. Not just now, not just the June lows this year, but going back to the summer of 2021, this was a very important level. And so if you were to break this level on FTT and fall below this, you could be heading into a tailspin, okay? Right now, you're at market support. A lot of coins are sitting here at its June lows, and they've purposely been sitting there, right? They're at the bottom of a bear market, and they're trying to work on a reverse wow. So if FTX was to struggle now and the FTT token was to start dropping below, it'll be the only coin that's really spiraling out of control away from its June lows. And so they want to defend this level, and that's why they want to be buying, but they've not got much reserves to be doing so. And that is what CZ replied to here to say that, you know, I think he put this shrug emoji, right? In other words, yeah, they've not got any money. I'm going to have to sell on the market, which is very interesting. Okay, so CZ wasn't done tweeting though. He then tweets, liquidating our FTT is just post-exit risk management. So he's saying, look, guys, this is not an attack. This is not an attack on Sam Bankman-Fried. I know everybody says I'm competing with him. This is just post-exit risk management. Learning from Luna. Oh, he said it. I didn't say it. So he's now putting them in the same category as Luna, saying, guys, I've learned from Luna. People have made that same mistake before. I know CZ got hurt with a bunch of Luna he was holding as well. And he's like, I do not want to be sitting on a bunch of FTT bags when this goes to zero. Interesting. So he says, look, it's just a risk management approach. We gave support before, but we won't pretend to make love after divorce. This is where it starts to change. Look at his tonality in the same tweet. In the same tweet, the first sentence is very methodical, right? This is just risk management. This is business. Then he goes, we gave support before, but we won't pretend to make love after divorce. We are not against anyone, but we won't support people who lobby against other industry players behind their backs onwards. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. Remember when we were playing out the two scenarios? Is this an attack by CZ or is this just prudent risk management? It looks like it's a bit of both. Right? And this tweet kind of clarified that. Look, he feels hard done by here. He's not happy that Sam Bankman-Fried went behind people's backs, including him, to go lobby for regulation. Because we know Sam Bankman-Fried's been doing that. He's been paying politicians. He's been lobbying. He's trying to get regulation in place that benefits him. He didn't sit in a room with CZ from Binance and all the other big players to say, what suits all of us, guys? We're all on the same mission here. Let's sit down and agree on a set of frameworks for regulation and push that through. Instead, he's pushing through what suits him. And CZ is not taking kindly to this. And you can see that's on his mind. So this is not just a pure risk management play. If it was, you could argue that CZ would have started selling earlier. Maybe there's a bit of a resentment there, which is playing through as well. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, so then we got Sam Bankman-Fried's response. A huge thank you to everyone who has supported us. We're excited to keep climbing together, etc., etc. He goes, a bunch of unfounded rumors have been circulating. FTX keeps audited financials. Now, this is where he tries to kind of muddy the waters a little bit. Just be careful. Remember, this whole argument we're talking about is Alameda. Alameda's balance sheet is what we got exposed. And we're saying that there's a hole in the Alameda balance sheet due to the fact that there's this flywheel effect, which we're explaining. If the flywheel effect collapses, the FTT token could collapse, which can cause issues for FTX as well as Alameda, of course. Okay, so this is not FTX's balance sheet that we're looking at right now. So he comes out and says that. Then this is the key. He goes, we've already processed billions of dollars of deposits and withdrawals today. We'll keep going. Okay, taking up anti-spam checks to process. Sorry if you got those. We're hitting node rate capacity. Tons of USD stablecoin conversions going on. So this is very normal. And I think this is where the bit gets interesting, right? Now, if you guys remember, during the Terra Luna collapse, we saw similar tweets, right? We're dealing with it. Stay steady, lads. Deploying capital. We're going to defend the peg. That's normal, right? You want to show that you're doing something. Like I've said, I personally will be very, very shocked and dismayed if FTX went down, but nothing is beyond possibility here in the crypto space. That's one thing I've learned in my years in crypto. These things can happen. Now, when you might think in traditional finance, it might not happen, but in crypto, your best exchange can collapse. And that's just the reality of where we're at. We've seen Mt. Gox, we've seen issues previously, and we've got to be prepared for these situations, even if it's an edge case. And I think Sam Bankman-Fried has come to peace with that as well. Because if you look at it, what he says here, when this blows over, we'll welcome everyone back. So he's right. And I think this is the right way to approach it. Because the reality is, even if I didn't think FTX was going to collapse, I would take my funds out. I personally don't have any funds in FTX, but if I did, you'll be out, right? Because there's no point. What benefit do I gain from leaving in there and proving I'm some tough guy, right? It's just laziness. Take it out. move it to another exchange that doesn't have any FUD. Because the reality is, normally there's no smoke without fire, fine. But if there was smoke, what you want to make sure you've done is you've acted, right? You've pulled your money out. And that's what we need to see here, is when the proof is going to be in the pudding, when all this dies down, when everybody withdraws their money, do the numbers stack up for Sam Bankman-Fried? And that's what we're going to find out. Is he well capitalized? Is this a bunch of FUD, or is there actually a hole? And that's what we saw with Celsius. That's what we saw with others like Voyager when it started to unwind and unravel, whether due to a bank run, whether due to, a real reason that people are withdrawing. That's when we find out if you're well capitalized. And the reality is, this is one of the rare areas where traditional finance have it right. All banks go through a stress test to make sure that they're well capitalized. That if X percentage of people were to run and ask for their money back today, could you fulfill? And unfortunately, here in the crypto space, maybe they're doing their own private checks at Binance and FTX, but we don't see the results of those. We don't know if they're truly collateralized. Now, to give you an example, after the Terra Luna collapse, I don't know if you remember, there was some FUD around Tether, where everybody said, oh, there was some FUD and it depegged briefly, but they managed to recover the peg, and they redeemed everybody $1 to 1 Tether throughout that whole saga. And credit to them, they did it, right? And this is what Sam Bankman-Fried has to do now. He has to just own this. If everybody wants to take their money in FTX, keep giving their money back, give their money back, give their money back, and at the end of it, we'll find out if it was a Ponzi and if it collapses. If you're confident in your business model, you shouldn't care. You should have to give everybody their money back, prove your strength, and then welcome the money back in. But the ones who are desperate to hold on to it is where you've got a Ponzi going on, because that's when a Ponzi collapses. Okay, and that's that flywheel effect which we're alluding to. So we're going to find out with a matter of time. No doubt, obviously, the FUD will be affecting people. They will be pulling their money out, like Sam Bankman-Fried is saying, and we'll see how this plays out over time. So there you have it, guys. A crazy Monday, and not a video I thought I'd been making on what is a crazy week for crypto regardless. But this just shows the craziness of the crypto space. We've got Fed officials speaking this week. We've got the start of the midterm elections. We've got a CPI reading on Thursday. So a lot to play for this week. But who knew that the two biggest exchanges and the two biggest personalities, Sam Bankman-Fried and CZ from Binance, are at loggerheads here over an issue which is very difficult to kind of understand and analyze the motives of. There you have it, guys. Hopefully this explains what is going on. If you appreciate this type of content, make sure you subscribe below. Let me know in the comments if you appreciate this type of stuff. Check out BYBIT and BitGet. They support the channel. Links in the description. And I'll see you in the next one.